My name is Al Segalla. Welcome to Taxpayer Alert. This program is one of a series that explores local issues. And we have some very good guests, including this one is really we're excited about, Joel Metzger, who is the Public Relations Director from the Calaveras County Water District. And of course, he has a lot to say about conservation, so we may not have time. So some of the questions that we normally would have about reducing the size of government, but we might get a few of those questions in anyway. And Joel, how did you were editor of the newspaper, and you also you conducted forums for the political candidates, and you've done so many things. Your dad was a past assessor, and now you're in a whole different world, and you seem to be doing great. Tell me a little bit how that happened.
Well,
and welcome.
Thank you so much for the opportunity to come on the show. It's really an honor to be here, and I'm generally on the other side of the table here because I still do have the Inside View show. But it's really fun to be the interviewee sometimes. And I grew up in the county. I grew up in San Andreas on a small farm, and my dad did serve as the assessor, along as doing lots of hobbies and winemaking and farming and growing apples and other orchard crops. And then I went off to college after high school, and eventually studied political science at Sonoma State University. And upon returning from there, I very randomly applied for a job at the Calaveras Enterprise, not because it had been something I'd always wanted to do, but because the job opportunity was presented to me, and my sister said, it's a wonderful skill to have, and that being journalism. No matter what life path you follow, it's a great skill to have, so you should definitely give it a try, at least for a summer. And so I did take that job and became a reporter. And it really opened my eyes to what a wonderful county this is, what a wonderful place it is to live, how great our community is, and how close-knit many people are, and how giving and generous they are. And it sent me all over the county to places that I never normally would have gone. And it introduced me to people that I never normally would have met unless you were kind of being paid to do that. And so I really loved the county more than I ever did before, and spent 6 years there, and eventually worked my way up to be the editor of the paper, and served as the editor for about a year. And then the CCWD job came up, and my official title is the Community Customer Relations Manager. And so I handle the community relations part, and I'm the spokesperson, but I also do manage the customer service department. And so I speak with customers every day and try to resolve difficult situations and improve the department. And Al, it has been a complete change for me from being editor and trying to be more of a generalist where you know a little bit about a lot of things, and now I have to be a specialist and I have to know a lot about water,
Right.
But it does go beyond that, and I think that the skills I learned in the newspaper industry have really prepared me well for my current position, and I'm excited to talk more about the district and especially water conservation, because this drought is something else, let me tell you.
What is there other jobs that you work besides the newspaper?
So I'd say that the newspaper was my first kind of full-time job that I guess you might say I grew up and got a full-time job. But before then, I also like to say that I was slave labor on the farm as a youngster. So I definitely learned how to prune and hoe up rows and do a lot of weeding and harvesting. But I also worked construction for Seidel Construction. I worked for a catering company, the former farm advisor, Ken Churches. I worked for him for many years. And then I did a lot of work in restaurants as a server, Greenhorn Creek, and also down in Sonoma when I was going to college. And that was a wonderful opportunity as well. So all of those things kind of have shaped me in some way or another. But I must say, I don't think I've ever enjoyed a job as much as the one I'm currently doing, because I've always liked challenges. And CCWD certainly presents a lot of challenges, and the climate that we have now with the drought and the state regulations and what that forces the water district to do, that's definitely presenting a big challenge that I didn't necessarily anticipate when I came in. But I've been really encouraged to see how our community has really stepped up and saved water. And I also am excited about improving CCWD, and I think that I've been able to work with the team over there to affect some really, really positive change. And I want to tell you about some of the things that we've done as we go through the interview.
Oh, that's great. You have there's a capital improvement program, and how is that going?
So it's called the Capital R&R program. You'll see that on your bill if you're a CCWD customer. But basically what that stands for is the Capital Renovation and Replacement Program. And it's a very important program because most of the infrastructure in CCWD's service areas is about 50 years old, some even 60 years old. And even some of the systems that are a little bit younger than that, they are just failing left and right. And so we're getting leaks springing up, some of which are a public safety hazard. And so we are always repairing those leaks, but sometimes, you can only put so many patches in something, and it just makes more economic sense to go in and replace the whole thing. And so we are focusing on a number of things. One of the main projects are main water line replacements. And we have one coming up in Arnold that's going to start this summer called Reach 3A. And that's what transports water from the Meadowmont Shopping Center area all the way through town, all the way up to kind of the hill above with White Pines Lake. And it goes from one tank to another. And that's a very long stretch of pipe, and it's about a 12-inch pipe, and so it's a big pipe. And it's just been leaking and causing lots of issues, so we're going to be replacing that. But in addition to the water projects, we're also replacing some tanks on the water side. We also have wastewater projects because we provide water and wastewater service. And so we're replacing lift stations, which are the pump stations that push the effluent to the treatment plants. And we're also doing our best to upgrade some of the piping that goes between that area. And so we have about 6 or 7 really big projects that are on this Capital R&R list. And people should know, in order to fund these projects, we have to increase the rates. And we have increased the rates in 2013 and in 2014. And what people also should know is that rate increase, both of those rate increases, every dollar is reserved for the Capital R&R program. It doesn't go into the general operation fund. It can only go to the program that's going to improve the infrastructure throughout the district. And so this is an absolutely crucial program. But in order to pay for it, we understand that higher rates can be a hardship for some of our customers, and we're constantly trying to make sure that we reprioritize if anything changes to make sure that we're making the best use of those funds, while at the same time addressing the critical projects that have to be done.
I understand that this has not always been the case with CCWD.
Yeah, so there was a time period kind of in the 1990s and into the 2000s where we kind of pushed the deferred maintenance off. And that's not to say we didn't do maintenance that needed to be done and we didn't replace things. We did do projects all throughout that period, but we didn't have quite as much funds that were dedicated specifically to repair and replacement. And so a board made a very difficult decision to say, we're going to go ahead and raise the rates and we're going to dedicate funds to this program. And Al, most people, once we kind of explain how important it is to replace these projects, they understand the need for it, but it doesn't make it any easier to pay that bill every 2 months.
And that's for sure. I understand a little cabin up in Arnold, the water and sewer is $130 a month. And for the rent is, it's such a big hunk of the rent, it's just incredible.
Yeah, and I can totally understand that. Some of the houses up in the high country, they don't use as much water because they don't usually have as much outdoor landscaping. And yet what CCWD does is it takes all of its 6 different service areas, and they're all, they're not connected, they're all separate, which adds to the cost. And we put all of that into one pot, and then that is what we use to determine the rate for the whole area. And it's based on the cost, but so some people have to realize that they're not paying specifically for their service area. They're putting their money into what's called an enterprise fund, and then it is used to serve everyone. And the reason that was done some years ago was because there are some disadvantaged communities that we serve that just don't have the money to pay for the repair and renovation of their area, so we had to bring everything together.
I understand. What do you see as biggest challenges ahead?
There's no bigger challenge than the drought right now. The drought is unprecedented, and just to put it into perspective for you, the last drought that was 4 years in length, as we're dealing with now, and of this severity, the only way we know when that was during to look at tree ring records.
Yes.
The tree ring records show that the last drought of this magnitude was in 900 AD. So that's how far back we're going to get a drought of this severity. We're currently in a very difficult situation where we see that our reservoirs are well below normal, and we didn't have the rainfall and the snowpack this year to fill them up. And so normally we would be having gushing rivers right now, and all kinds of millions of acre feet would be coming in, and that's not happening this year.
And water for fish.
And then we have an environmental need, which is, that's state law and that's federal law, and so it's very difficult to not make those releases that are mandated. And then we have the human need and the agricultural need. So we have all these different needs that are kind of vying for that limited water supply. And so the drought poses a huge challenge, and the state this year got very serious about it and began addressing it on a mandatory level. Governor Jerry Brown issued an executive order in April, and he mandated that the entire state reduce its potable residential water use by 25% between June 1 of this year and February of next year. And that is what has caused and kicked off all of the water restrictions that you'll see across the state, and which are going to ramp up as the summer goes on. Another challenge, though, is the aging infrastructure. And I'm very proud to say that we have the capital and our R&R program in place to address that, because many agencies don't have that. And I think that the drought and the infrastructure tie together, Al, because when you have old infrastructure and it's just about past its useful life, it doesn't hold water very well.
Right.
What that leads to is you're treating water that's beautiful and ready to drink, and you're pushing it out into a pipe, but only a portion of that water is actually getting to the customer. The rest is potentially being leaked out. And we have to be very cognizant of that, because in the drought, every drop really does count. And so every pipe that we can replace using these funds and seeking state funds to help us as well, every pipe that we can replace is going to get more of that water to our customers, and less of that water is going to be lost. And so it's very cool, very key.
I understand that there's some advances in repair of water pipes. They have a system now where they actually put a liner in the existing pipe.
That's right. That is one technique. You can actually keep the existing pipe in place. You don't have to dig it up and rip it out, and you can shove the pipe right through there of a smaller diameter, and then you can have a pipe that doesn't leak. Now, we are not currently taking advantage of that with our Reach 3A project. We are going to be digging up the pipe and putting a brand new pipe in. And the reason for that, in part, is because we need that full diameter in order to serve those customers. And we also need to put a pipe that has a thicker sidewall to it in order to make it last even longer than the last pipe did.
I see. Is that concrete pipe or steel?
Steel.
I see.
It's pretty much the best pipe you can buy, so we're hoping it's going to last a very long time.
So the overview of the drought is that we don't know exactly. We know we've had some bad years. We don't know what's going to be coming from the future years. So,
and that puts us in a very uncertain position, because if we look at Australia, for an example, they had a 10-year drought down there not long ago. And it's commonly said that they didn't realize they were in a drought until year 8 of the drought, and then they got serious about addressing it. Now we're in year 4 of this drought, and the state is addressing it. And I know that there are concerns about how the state is addressing the drought and what they've decided to mandate and how that affects people. And I think that the governor is doing the best that he can, given the circumstance, but we never really have had a drought of this magnitude in recorded history. And I think we're going to learn a lot from this, and I think we're hopefully going to find a good balance of what is the appropriate way to respond to a drought. But the truth of the matter is, this is a serious, serious drought, and we have to respond, and we have to make sure that we're doing this on a statewide level. If each water agency kind of did its own thing and didn't have any guidance that unified everyone, it would be very difficult to actually make the savings that we need. And so at this point, the state does have the power through the State Water Resources Control Board to tell water suppliers exactly what they have to do, because the water in California is owned by the state. It's not owned by the water agencies. We have the right to use that water and to divert that water based on water rights that we're able to perfect, but we don't actually own the water. And so that the state has a great deal of power in what they allow us to do and to not do.
It seemed like using the cookie cutter approach to water conservation could have a hurtful effect to those districts and even individuals that early on have cut back drastically and are operating highly efficiently before 2013. So now we have the governor saying, well, you must cut another 25% because I said so. And to the taxpayer and to to the water consumer, this seems like it's not really appropriate. It seems like this should be thought out a little bit better, and then look at each district needs to look at their own what they're doing. Some are doing great. Some, and also this level of responsibility is not the same on every district. Some are very responsible. Other ones not so much.
That's right, and you bring up really good points. So let me just kind of outline how the state mandate affects the different water agencies. So the governor ordered the 25% mandatory cutback statewide, which that's an aggregate. So that's everyone gets thrown into the same pot, and we need to save what amounts to 1.3 million acre feet of water. Now, how much is an acre foot? It's a football field covered in a foot of water. So that's kind of give you an idea of how much that is. And then to give you reservoir perspective, New Melones Reservoir, when full, is 2.4 million acre feet. So we're saving, about half of New Melones or a little bit less. So, so what did the governor ask the state water board to do in order to achieve a 25% reduction? The governor gave them some discretion to decide how much cutback is going to have to happen. And so what they did is they looked at what is called residential gallons per capita day, and that's abbreviated as RGPCD, and you're going to see this in the news. And that is how much does each person use per day in their household. And so what they do to figure out that number is first they went back to 2013. They went back to 2013 because that was before any mandatory cutbacks were put in place. They thought it would be fair to look at that as a baseline number. And so now all of the conservation that we're doing in 2015 is not compared to 14, it's compared back to 13. And I think that was a good decision because then you're punishing fewer people. Now, how do they measure us? They measure us based on the gallons per capita day used. Is that a perfect system? No, it's not a perfect system. Calaveras County has a very hot climate during the summer. We have larger lots, and we have lots of people who like to have small farms and orchards and vineyards, and they came up here for that reason in many cases. And we support the use of land for those uses. We want to see that. That's a great thing. Unfortunately, when you have big lots and lots of agriculture and outdoor water use, whether it's landscaping or agriculture, you use more water. And you use more water per person per day than if you compare it to, let's say, San Francisco, where you have a lot of apartments or small houses with little to no outdoor landscaping, and what is growing outdoors has the fog and the rain and the cooler temperatures down there. It's really not an apples-to-apples comparison.
Right.
So what does it mean in numbers? Calaveras averaged in CCWD district 180 gallons per capita day. Other places in San Francisco averaged maybe 55 gallons per capita a day. The state assigned tiers of water conservation from 4% reduction up to 36% reduction because of the water use in Calaveras County. Because of our evapotranspiration rates and the lot size, we got the second highest tier. So we've been asked to cut back by 32% by the state. And it's going to be very difficult to do that. That's going to be a huge challenge, which is why we are trying to work with the state to give them more information about the situation and circumstances here and adjust our numbers when it's appropriate to try to get down at least into the 28% conservation standard. And that would be a huge win for us because that would really take some of that burden off of our ratepayers. And I think it's feasible because our ratepayers came through and cut back by 18% last year, which is huge, top 10% of all water purveyors in the state. So we're doing a great job. But I do want to tell you about what we're doing to help the folks. So what everyone needs to be aware of is stage 3.5 mandatory conservation measures. This is passed by the board. It's an ordinance. If you violate it, you can be fined. But we really mainly want to work with you and educate you about these measures. And the most important things you need to be aware of as a residential customer is that all outdoor irrigation is prohibited after 9 a.m. in the morning and before 7 p.m. at night. So you just can't water during the hot part of the day. You got to water early in the morning or late at night. And then the second thing is watering is only 2 days a week now. And so if you have a odd-numbered street address, you can water on Tuesdays and Saturdays. And if you have an even-numbered address, you can water on Wednesdays and Sundays. No outdoor watering of ornamental landscaping on any of the other days. One exception to this is if you have edible gardens or orchards that you are using local food supply, you get 1 extra day in order to keep those edible crops alive. And those are the really key things for the residential, but there are 20 points here of water conservation mandates, and they all must be followed. And so I encourage people to go to ccwd.org and check out the full list, and these flyers are going to be everywhere. And we also are giving out free water conservation supplies. And so you can get a moisture meter, a shower timer, you can get a low-flow shower head, an automatic hose timer that turns off automatically, a toilet leak detector, a faucet aerator, and they're at the local hardware stores in your area. If you're a CCWD customer, go to your local hardware store and say, I'm a CCWD customer, we'll give those to you. And finally, we have a rebate program for efficient washing machines, more efficient toilets, efficient irrigation supplies, and also a smart irrigation controller. So we'll give you money, give you credit on your bill when you show us proof of purchase of any of those things.
How does the smart controller work?
So the controller is really cool. You can kind of choose from a wide variety of them, but they have to be EPA WaterSense certified, which means it's the highest level of efficiency. And the best ones will actually hook up to a soil moisture meter, which is stuck in the ground, and so it knows when your lawn needs water. And then it can also hook up to the internet, and it can check the weather, and it knows if there's a storm coming not to water the lawn in advance of it, or if it's raining, it would never allow the lawn to be watered or your landscaping. They're really cool.
Do you think that people still have lawns?
I encourage anyone and everyone to let their lawn go brown. And I have a lawn at my home, and my wife and I have decided that we're going to let that lawn brown up this year. Now, hopefully we get some rain to hopefully keep it alive, but it's a severe drought. We all need to do our part. There's nothing that will make a bigger difference than letting your turf go brown, or maybe taking that turf out and replacing it with a drought-tolerant or native plant garden, or hardscape. You can do some neat rock gardens, cactuses, other things that use very little water. These are the things that we're encouraging people to do during the drought. It's not a time of plenty anymore in California, so we have to really shift how we're using water in the state.
Joel, let's suppose that the drought ended this coming winter, and the reservoirs are full. How much of the regulations that have been put in place will continue to affect the people?
So the state is issuing orders that do have an end date at this point. So like the current order that we're under begins measuring on June 1st, and then it ends in February of 2016. And then what the state does is then they renew those things, like they've already renewed it once. So this is the second order that we're under. What I'm hearing from the state is that they want to make at least a portion of these regulations permanent. They want to change how Californians view water, they want to change how Californians use water, and they want to put some of these things that they believe make sense into place on a permanent basis. However, the state has also been very careful to set a bare minimum of statewide standards and then give directives to the local water agency and say, we want you to achieve this level of conservation, but we're going to give you discretion on how you go about achieving that. And so one water agency might choose to do it one way, and then another water agency might take a whole different path to achieve the same goal. And I believe that the water agencies, we believe that we do know best for our ratepayers and our customers. And I think it's very important that, yes, the state gives guidance, but we need to have control over our local water supply and how our customers experiences using water. And I think there needs to be a compromise there. We don't want the state to be telling us everything that we have to do locally.
Well, our taxpayers really favor that. We'd like to maintain our free society, if at all possible.
Absolutely.
What is the best case seen for the future?
So, like you just said, let's hope that we have not just an average winter this year, but an above average winter. And I know that that comes with some flooding, but I think we'd all take some flooding over some drought. And we need to get these reservoirs filled up. You know, New Maloney's is down to below 20% capacity, and it would take a well above average year to fill that back up. And a lot of our other reservoirs in the state are less than 50% as well. And so we're going to need lots and lots and lots of rain. But it's not just rain we need. We need cold enough weather to have snow, because, you know, maybe you don't think about this, but the biggest reservoir in the state is the snowpack. the entire Sierra holds that water and slowly releases it during the summer back in normal California.
Right.
And that's what we really all relied on, and that's how our water system was built. And so the best case scenario would be that we have a couple bumper years, get those reservoirs filled back up, and then we continue to get a more normal rainfall pattern. But I think we should also consider what the worst case scenario is. And that is that we have another year like we did in this last winter, which was the driest year on record. And a great example of that is there's a snow measuring area that the governor visited on April 1st, and it usually has between 5 and 6 feet of snow during that time. When he went there was not only no snow, it was an open field. You couldn't see any snow as far as the eye could see. And that's a really real example of how bad this year was. Even though we had some storms, it didn't have snow that stuck, and so it all ran off, and we don't have that big reservoir to rely on. So if we have another year of drought, the reservoirs that we do have left are going to shrink down even further, and we're going to have a much more serious situation next year because a lot of the agricultural interests and others, they're continuing to use close to their normal allotment of water. Everyone's cutting back to some extent, but what that means is we're really not leaving a whole lot for next year. And that's why it's absolutely key that CCWD retains as much storage as possible in our reservoir spacer up in the high country and cuts back on any kind of releases, whether it be for environmental or for power making, to try to hold that water so we can continue to provide water if the drought continues.
There's a new organization that you got involved with, or CCWD got involved with. It's called Calaveras Conserves. It's a website, and the different water districts got together to provide information for the public. Can you tell us about that?
This is something that I'm just so proud to be a part of, and it's a group effort. It's no one person has done it, but it's members for every water agency in the county, and there are 6 of us that provide water, have come together and formed calaverasconserves.com, and any water restriction for each agency is on that site in one place that's really easy to find. And so I encourage anyone who's interested in their water restrictions to go to calaverasconserves.com, and we also are putting the signs that you see in front of this table all over the county to remind people this drought is real, but we're working together as water agencies in the county to make sure that we do the best thing that we can for everyone involved.
That is fascinating. Well, we've kind of let the water district and their conservation efforts take over our taxpayer alert, but I guess this is a badly needed thing because we really would appreciate to have water in the future, and conservation is certainly part of it. One of the things that we are concerned about is the worst case scene. Suppose next year is as bad as last year. In 20 seconds, what do we do?
We're all going to have to make lifestyle adjustments, and we're going to have to make sacrifices that we've never had to make before. But we're also going to have to fight for the right to use the resources that we have as a source county with the mountains and the massive rivers coming down through here, and make sure that we protect the rights of our citizens to use what originates here. And we will fight for that.
Thank you, Joel. Thank you for watching Taxpayer Alert. See you next time.